Welcome back to another episode of the Trenchless Table, where white and blue collar collide. Today we're joined with Dustin Schlachter, Lee Drugan, myself, Cole Andrews, and a special guest, Dave Carpenter. Dave is the Vice President of the Trenchless Division of Corby Energy Services. He brings over 3 decades of experience to utility infrastructure work, and he currently serves, like I just said, as the Vice President of the Trenchless Division at Corby, where he leads up planning, execution, innovation of non-disruptive, trenchless infrastructure rehabilitation projects. Specialize in communication, electrical, gas, street lighting, water and sewer, and trenchless rehabilitation. Think horizontal drilling, directional drilling, CIPP lining, that sort of work. Without further ado, Dave, thank you for joining us at the table.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So as we were talking just briefly a second ago, Dustin and you have known each other for several years.
Long time.
Lee and I have known you for several seconds.
Yeah, good to know. I feel like I've known you for at least 10 seconds or more.
Sure,
anyway.
sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit. I know it's been you mentioned almost 40 years in the trenchless space, trenchless technology, open cut, construction space.
Yeah, and I tell you, I said earlier, the only reason it really hit me is because, like I said, when you go from listening to the stories to telling the stories about construction, you know that you put some miles behind you. But I got into the business mainly like everyone else because no one else would hire me. No, that's not true at all. I got into the business because where I was working at, I was making minimum wage, and Dustin and I were talking earlier, and I was mapping out my life, and I wanted to make a certain amount of money by a certain age. I was 17 years old, and I wasn't making it. And one day after I turned 18, my brother said, "Hey, we got an opening on this construction site. Do you want a job?" And I'm like, "Well, what's it pay?" And it paid 3 times more than I was making. I said, "I'm in. What are we doing?" And he told me. I really didn't understand it. But I was first day on my job. I loved it. Got into it as a general laborer. I was doing a lot of things I didn't understand. I was being sent to get tools that I didn't know what they were. But I knew that I was working with dirt. And I told Dustin earlier, as a kid, I loved playing with Hot Wheels, and I loved dirt, loved being outside, loved mud. And so I got into the business that way. And then I said, well, I really love this. And I decided from like maybe 6 months in, they gave me a raise after 2 weeks, right? After 2 weeks, right? I thought, wow, they gave me a raise. Maybe every 2 weeks I'll be rich in like 6 weeks. Didn't work out quite that way. Still waiting for that third 2 weeks to come. But anyway, I really loved it and I liked it. And I said, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to learn every job ahead of me and take each job. And so I learned the top man's job, the bottom man's job. I learned the foreman's job, the site superintendent's job. And one job at a time, I began to just take over and be able to run crews, multiple crews. Loved it so much that I literally caught myself trying to determine how much it would cost to even build a job, right? I'm like, wow, we're out here so long. I mean, I kind of know what labor costs, and so I didn't know what equipment cost, but I could tell you what pipe costs. And I had such a desire to really understand what I was doing, and I loved it so much that eventually, without me ever asking, I was asked to become an estimator. And I thought that was pretty cool because somebody recognized something in me that maybe I didn't really recognize. And then a project manager. And here we are many years later after learning how to do bore rock, to directional drilling, pipe bursting, all the different trenchless technologies that you mentioned, and many more, site development as well, building building pads, putting in strip malls, building roads and partial bridges. Here I am sitting here today. Like I said, I've known Dustin for a while. We don't get to see each other very much. He's kind of travels around, but I love the business. It's great. Don't plan on going anywhere soon. I love all of its quirks, its nuances, the changes in technology and the things that you can do. And what I love most is everywhere I go, and I know Dustin probably drives his wife crazy, but I tell my wife, I worked there 2 years ago. I worked there last week. I worked here. Can we stop and open that manhole lid? I want to look and see if that still works. And she's like, stop it already, right? But yeah, so I've been in it for a long time. And I got in because my brother, his job site had an opening. And that's what had happened. And I told Dustin earlier, if you love something, you can just really be compassionate about it. And I tell people when they come to work for me, right, or people want to, that, you just can't come to work for me and think you're going to have a good career, right? You have to fall in love with it. Really, you have to be in love with it before you come. And I love it. Many people we have hired couldn't fall in love with it. And if you love it, you can be it. But it really goes back to whether it's a CVS store, a McDonald's, an ice cream stand, or even Obic. if you're somebody who's passionate about what you do and you invest your time, your employer is going to see it. Eventually, the higher up stakeholders are going to see it. And eventually, you can be as high as you can go, maybe short of ownership at the franchise, maybe ownership. If they're on the exchange, maybe partnership or maybe stock. So the sky's the limit for anyone. If you make application, the greatest plans fail, we all know, due to lack of execution, right? You have to believe in yourself first. And if you don't believe in yourself and love the work, it's going to be difficult. But it's a great career to be in, right, Dustin?
We've had a lot of fun. I was thinking about the first job, and then maybe not the first job that we met on, but it was in Michigan. We were doing a pressure sewer system up there, and was it maybe a Brighton or
Yes, Brighton was a Brighton area.
Hampton?
There's
Right
a
around,
lot of lakes up there.
yeah, one of those lakes around there. And I remember you guys were setting the grinders, and Wolfgang something house. I can't remember, but
Wolfgang.
I remember that it was somebody kind of quasi famous.
Wolfgang Puck,
Yes.
the chef.
Yes.
Okay.
I think.
Yeah.
It might have been. And you had to take his deck out, and then you had to hand dig down.
Yes.
And everything was, you had to carry everything in and everything out. And essentially you were shoring it with batter boards and ring and board. And
Yes.
it was a very difficult job for your team. And I just remember that.
I don't feel good.
I just remember that. I don't know. You know, in this industry, you'd go by the job sites, but then there's those certain things of certain jobs you just remember and you go, ugh.
You have to improvise, adapt, and overcome every day, whether it's drilling, whether it's pipe bursting, patching, whether it's coating manholes, trying to stop leaks. I mean, that's the thing about this business that makes it so great is we go in every day with a plan, but you have to have a playbook, right? Because the plan usually falls apart just about the time you pull up on a job site. When I worked for Thomas Excavating, who's out of business, and they were old country boys when I first started back in 1986. When I started for them, Luke Thomas, who was a wonderful man, he's passed away now, but I always knew where we were going to start out on a new project site because he always drove his truck over the main stake, ran it over, and snapped it off at ground level. And he would always say, "Where's the stake at where we're starting?" And we'd say, "Back your truck up." So right away, you're trying to get a benchmark and a new center line and get an offset, right, so you can figure out where to begin. So the business offers just new things every day. You do a lot of boring on one part of the company, so you don't know what you're getting into, right? You look at a project, you know you have an entry point and an exit point, right? But what happens in between, who really knows what our forefathers did, what they did in the WPA days, or what the neighbor did before he, sold the property, right? You might have a soil boring, but it's only as good as the spot you took it, right? So if it goes down with a 6-inch diameter auger, you know that what's happening in 6 inches in a circumference, in a diameter. But until you start drilling, I remember years ago in Florida, a guy asked me, an engineer, he said, "What's going to happen?" We're drilling under one of the intercoastal waters, and he said, "What's your plan if you drill out and you hit something and you can't push forward?" And I looked at him, I'm like, "I need more information on that." He says, "Or if you break off, what's your plan?" And I said, "Well, where did I stop pushing? Where did I break off? How deep was I? Was I under the water, and what caused it?" Because until I know what those things are, I can't really tell you what my plan. I don't really have a plan. It's really difficult because every day is a new day, right? It's like stopping a leak at the bottom of the manhole only for it to pop up at the top of the manhole.
Correct. Yeah. And that's, unfortunately, that's the trenchless industry, and that's just part of our livelihood. And it's not open cut. That's why it's less trench. And so you have to prepare, do the best you can to prepare for the unknowns. But tomorrow, you've been in the same spot for the last 3 days, and tomorrow something happens different. We'll figure it out.
We figured it out. And I think one of the things that the most veiled thing about my story, and the reason I like to talk about it all the time with people when I can, especially young people that are looking for the opportunity to grow into this business, as Micro would say, is that I don't know if Dustin even knows this, but it's no secret if someone asked me, but I dropped out of high school in my junior year. And I went back and got my GED 3 years later and knocked it out of the park. Actually was like 75th percentile, I think it was, in the country, right? So I was already an intelligent man. Maybe. With enough mistakes I made along the way. But as a high school dropout, went back and got my GED, decided to get some college in later in my 20s. Then I dropped out of that. But in the meantime, I'm doing the construction trades. And as I'm moving up further and further, right, I'm making application of some of the education that I picked up in school. You know, math is a very important thing for the whole world and for the industry that we're in as a whole. But I just, through application, I tell people all the time, they'll say, but I don't think I can do it. And I say, I dropped out of high school my junior year. And like, no, you didn't. I go, I'm serious.
Yeah.
I did. And just to go to show you that, you know, when you put your mind to it to look forward to become something that you're really not, you can do it, right? Yes, you don't live in yesterday. That's not our address anymore, right? So I don't live in the days of where I dropped out of high school. All the things that used to try to haunt me and taunt me, I don't allow in my life anymore. I get a plan, I get a vision, and I like to move forward, and I think that we can accomplish all things if we put our minds to it. When I coach basketball for young kids, I told them the only limitations that we have on the court are those that are in our mind. I believe 25% of the game played above the rim. The other 75% was in the head of the player. Mm-hmm. And these kids that I would coach would just become, I mean, over time, really great players because they believed in themselves and they believed in fundamentals and basics. And that's what Trenchless industry is all about. If you have the fundamentals of water, gravity, pressure, you know, storm and water, raw water, sanitary sewer, you understand their use, their application, what you're doing as a whole in the industry, what it's supposed to do and what its purpose is, we can make those improvised changes in the field. We can adapt to things because we know the purpose, what we're doing, and the long-term goals and expectations. And it's the same thing on the basketball court. If you know your role and you play the fundamentals, they say when you're 13 years old, the other team, they're going to get frustrated. They're not going to follow the fundamentals. They'll foul you 1,000 times, right? And eventually you're only going to be the last 5 guys in the court. Everyone else will fall out because they're not disciplined enough to do and play their positions. Mm-hmm. So I say if you're disciplined in this industry and you want to get somewhere in this industry, you can. Like if you're picking up garbage in this industry, you know, you can be the guy throwing the stuff in the garbage at some point in time. Mm-hmm. You just make an application. And what I don't like in life is, and I learned this a long time ago, is when people come to me and they say, Dave, I've earned a raise, you know, and I'll say, oh, really? I do want to give you a raise, honestly. Why should I give you a raise? And they say, because I do a really good job. And I said, I hired you to do a really good job. So that doesn't really work. I mean, I didn't hire you to do a bad job. But what do you have based on merit that I can do? Where have you improved? Where is your skills honed in? Where have you become more efficient? Where have you, been able to make more use of the crews? You cut down on lost time, but we get more productive. And how can we expand and better take care of the equipment? So I like to hear that things when people talk about merit. And merit's just, something, again, you have to love the business, right? Mm-hmm. If you don't love the business, you don't take care of the equipment. You don't watch you watch the clock, you get in, you start on time, you leave early. And you just got to love it. You got to love it. I know you love it.
A lot of wisdom in that. And yes, for the last 25 years, I have loved it. And Cole, I think you were getting ready to ask a question based on one of those comments. I think there's some synergies in your thought process with sports and the analogy in there. I
was just going to make a joke of, Dave, we can tell you love this industry, dude.
Absolutely.
It is not a secret. In a good way, of course. I do have synergies in the sport thing, but I want to go back even further for a second.
Is it with the Browns and the Buckeyes? No.
It's with the Buckeyes for sure.
We'll go with that. That's fine.
Something you said, we could skate by it, but I don't want to, because this is like an ideal, if I could speak for ownership, an ideal employee benchmark or something you're trying to pull out of people is, I wanted to take everyone's job. Not from I want to take their job, ruin their life and their family and everything else and take their paycheck. I want to learn so that I can know how to do their job, so eventually someday I can have that job.
That's right.
Why did you have that? What sparked that in you to have that mindset and approach construction that way, having been hired randomly?
I had dreams and desires. Dustin and I were talking earlier about having an entrepreneurial mindset. And I know from reading The Wall over in the OBIC conference room there with the bicycle that Dustin did too. And I just had a drive, and I remember sitting at my mom and dad's kitchen table, and I kind of was writing out, and I don't have it anymore, and I can't even read my writing now, so I wouldn't be able to read it then. I'd go back to hieroglyphics class, but I was writing out, and I just knew that I wanted to get $100,000 in the bank, and I'll tell you the number, right? That was just a long time ago. I wanted to have $100,000 in the bank, and I had an age and everything all set up. And let me tell you something, it was super unrealistic, okay, when you look back on it. It wasn't what they call smart now, where it's specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and tangible. I didn't have a SMART goal, but it was a goal because it certainly wasn't reachable at $3.35 an hour, right? So it was not going to make it. But once I got into the business and I fell in love with the business, when the boss would say, Dave, I want you to go over and take this a grade rod and put it on that benchmark. There's a couple things that had to happen there. Number one, I didn't know what a grade rod was. I thought, hey, I dropped out of school in my junior year, right? So I had been hit with the rod and graded poorly. So what is a grade rod? So I had to ask him what a grade rod was, and he told me. And then he said, put it on a benchmark, which I had no idea what that was, and he explained it to me. And I thought, wow, what are the purpose of those? And he explained height of instrument, HI, and sea levels and elevations. And I thought, that's really cool, and I love math, right? And then I would go around and shoot things as he told me, and get the grade shots. And then I would ask him what the purpose was and how do they work. And I'd look at the plans, and then I'd say, why are they called stone aggregate? And he would tell me why it's crushed up. And I just had this very inquisitive mind because I loved dirt. I fell in love with dirt and projects. I would be so muddy coming home. It would be unbelievable. And I said, I want to go further. So I want his job. So I learned all about all the height of instrument, all the shooting and grades. And eventually, probably within 2 seasons, I was the person that they just dedicated to get those shots, to check the measurements, plus do my other jobs. And I was the guy that get to work 20 minutes early, change the oil quick in the pump on my own time because I wanted the pump to be ready when I went, because every day I had a goal. Some of the people I worked for, and we would set goals. We're going to get 300 feet open cut today, do that tough terrain, because we got 280 yesterday, and we'd go for it, and then we'd make it a goal. And the next day it'd be 320 and 350, and we just had fun on the job site, right? We worked hard and we had fun. Then I wanted to learn how the guy operated the machine, and after work I'd get on the machine and I would jump on it and I'd move the levers. And it's really great. And the first time I did it, I ripped the water service out of the ground, and I heard about that one for a while.
Yep.
Because that's why they didn't want me on the machine. So we fixed that, and that was a setback, and I learned a lot from that. But I learned how to run equipment, run projects, estimate, and project management, because I just had this drive. There's the two things that were running on 2 different tracks at the same time was my desire and goals to be what I deemed to be successful in this life and to have things. I wouldn't say we were super poor, but it was probably a 900 square foot house. There was 6 boys at one time and then 5 with my mom and dad. It was pretty small. And we didn't have a lot of anything. And I'm not saying that we weren't taken care of. I didn't realize we didn't have a lot of anything really until I was around people that had more than me. Right? You're okay when your neighbors don't have much either across the street next to you. But when I began to get out a little further as you get older, well, we don't have anything, right? These people got sweetened cereal. They have a wireless telephone. That guy can turn his VCR on and off. It's got a wire on and a remote control, right?
Hold on. Did you say sweetened cereal?
Yeah. I'm like, I had cornflakes and...
Okay.
I'm like,
Make sure I heard you right. I want to make sure the headphones
Difference
are working.
between Cheerios and Lucky Charms
Holy
right there.
cow.
So
All
I
right.
just wanted to be able to, and I do have a drive to know things. My dad used to sit and watch Jeopardy, and they would come on and they would ask who edited page 7 of the great poet whatever's book in 1720? I'm like, that's a dumb question. And my dad would say something, and then someone on TV would say it, and they go, that's right. And I go, why do you know that? He's like, I don't know. I just do. And I've become him. My wife will say, we're watching TV, and I'll say something on Modern Marvels, and then they go, how did you know they were going to talk about that? And I said, because I've become my old man.
Well, I asked that question, and thank you for answering it, because a big heart behind the Trenchless Table is obviously owed to the trades, owed to Les Trench, and just giving highlight to this industry, because it is full of great people like yourself that love dirt, love making a difference, love making municipalities run better, but also it's the next generation.
Yeah.
Because if we
100%.
don't have the next generation coming into this field with with not just a sit on your keister sort of mentality, but a hunger, an eager want, we're going to have manholes collapsing. We're going to have sinkholes everywhere. We're going to have lead pipes still going into home water services, et cetera. So that answer for the younger generation, if you're listening, what he said was, I fell in love with it, and then I needed to learn more.
Mm-hmm.
And
Correct.
if I could boil that down into
Correct.
just that simplicity, which I think is great. And it doesn't have to be overly complicated. I fell in love with it. And at that point, once I was in love, I needed to know more about it.
This reminds me so much of the conversation with Bill Martin when they were putting the track in for their employees of they wanted to learn different things throughout the company. this is a product of that without actually having that process in place.
Yeah.
Like this is what you get at the end of that. So obviously successful to have that type of a track where no matter what you do in the company, if you want to learn about electrical, you can go over there and learn that. So I think it's great. And I do want to ask now, though, you sit as the vice president of Trenchless Design, right?
With Trenchless, we're Trenchless Technologies on our side, so we're the division of Trenchless, which handles anything basically Trenchless. Now, we have people that do gas and electric, so I may not handle every bit of it, but I am involved in a facet of all of the Trenchless that we do.
So
have mainly over sewer and water at the moment.
What does your day-to-day look like right now in your position?
So I've never been an air traffic controller before, but when I hear about, there's a lot of talk about it, right, in 2025 right now at the moment about air traffic controllers. But I think of myself, when you go in, there's a lot going on, right? We've got incoming traffic and we've got outgoing, and we're trying to organize bidding jobs. We're trying to organize managing jobs. We have jobs starting. We have jobs closing out. We have people that owe us money. We have invoices that need to be paid. We've got personnel that need to be taken care of and time off. And you think, well, you've got HR people for that. You've got payables for that. And you've got AR. Well, you do. But when you let them run all of that without staying in touch with it, you lose touch of what's going on. And everything that I talked about earlier that precipitated this part of the conversation really is negated because I'm not in love with it anymore, right? And so I have this desire to have my hands in too many things too often. So my day-to-day is trying to communicate with the operations management team or the people that work directly under me that make sure the field gets executed, in dealing with the people in the admin departments to make sure people are getting paid, bills are getting paid. But at the same time, there's a certain element of business development. And we could even say today that's a part of it with Dustin. Obic does work for us and does a great job. Go Orange, right?
Absolutely.
I never thought orange was so beautiful until...
We love it.
Yes, you do. I could see that. And I love the browns, so I thank you very much for that color you chose. So
It was on purpose.
so
I'm just waiting for the day we get to actually coat something for the Browns, like at the stadium,
It won't
new
be this year.
stadium, something like that.
I don't
That'd
think
be
they have
great.
enough money this year to do it. Maybe next year.
It's the reason they're not doing well.
We need a winning season.
They need a good base. They need to make sure that everything underground is coated in orange and ready to go, and then things will.
It starts at
get
the
better.
foundation, right?
It starts
Everything
at
is
the foundation,
foundational.
under the foundation.
Yeah.
it reminds me of something, I tell everyone, whenever I used to do some conferences and do some speaking, but I don't like to do that. I like to go and listen because I like to hear and to learn, and when I'm talking, I'm not learning. I know that other people can glean from what I say, but I like to listen. I like to listen to audiobooks and stuff. But one of the coolest things about our industry, and what the toughest thing is, what I deal with on a day-to-day basis, and some days more than others, some days less than others, but it's always, and Dustin's always dealing with it, is that we have budgets and constraints that we deal with in what we bid, and we know that our clients, because it's either tax money or it's money that's coming into manufacturing or industrial or some sort of commercial base where they're trying to make a profit in what they do. So they have budgets. They have these limitations. And so we're trying to do rehabilitation to systems, be it municipal or whatever, where the owners of these facilities, these assets, have limitations in how they can fix. And it's odd to think of that I have a limited amount of money to fix the very thing that helps me make money, right? It's really weird to think that way. But what I used to always tell everyone, when you get into the business, there's a number of mindsets. Yes, I want to get the job done. I want to do it correctly. I want to do it correct and safe, and I want to do it within a budget. But understanding that just about everyone we work for in this industry is charging a customer for a level of service that they almost never perform. You think about the water industry and the sewer industry. They're afraid to charge their customers what they really should be charging them, because then election year comes up and they won't get voted in, right? Mm-hmm. So they say, well, I'm going to keep the cost down. And by keeping the cost down, they don't want to perform certain services, but they still don't change your bill because they're now being underfinanced to take care of an asset that's important and vital to your community. And then it decays, as to your point, to the next generation, and it gets handed off to them. And so what this next generation needs to know that, and if they watch TV, they already know that they are being handed a big deficit, whether we look at it from the federal government side or we look at it from the local side, they're being handed a big deficit. And I think that it's important that we look and see how this is America, United States of America, it's our country. And I think it's important for them to take a look at the country they live in and try to work within those constraints that we talk about budgets and about doing quality work like they did in the WPA days. And like that piece of water line we saw in your conference room, beautiful, right? Do quality work so that we can build the future together, and so we can look back, so they can get out of their car and tell their spouses or children, you know, that I helped get this done, and I helped get it done on budget and on time and safe. And I think that's important.
So when you're talking to those people, though, how do you help them decide if it needs to be a full replacement or if it can just be a rehab project when they're looking at their budgets?
That's a great question. So I like to look at budget, but I also sometimes take that out of my mind, and then you can be creative within a budget. So it's like, so what are we up against logistically? So I always say, because I'm an old open cut guy, that a new pipe, and people argue with me, is better than an old pipe. And I'll say that because I know what the soil envelope is if I open cut, right? And I can make sure the bedding's correct, the haunches are correct, and I can install it back on line and grade. But if we can't, and the line is in good enough condition to do rehab, and maybe you could open cut it, but their budget is such that you can't. So I have to kind of weigh that. So can I put it in nearly as good a condition? Maybe. Maybe a few pipe patches, maybe some grout. But then you have to look at maybe the building. Maybe it's next to a historical museum. Maybe it's a pipe bursting situation, but it's 3 foot off a basement wall that'll probably blow out if you upsize it or go size on side. So we have to look at, hey, can we get to the property? Is there access? There's so many things involved, right? So you have restrictions for easements, and land usage. Is the ground contaminated? Just when you get into this, like, what am I going to do with the soil when I get done? And sometimes a line that should probably be dug up, and after you weigh all that, you go, we're lining that because might be some hot soil there. We don't really know. We would have to do maybe a level 1, environmental study to find out, and that's money that might open up a can of worms nobody wants to talk about.
Right.
Yeah. Fix the problem.
Yep.
You got it. So there's really a lot that goes in. Budget's important, but really it's like, what are you trying to do? If you're trying to put a Band-Aid on, okay, I'm not down with that. I really do say you're wasting money.
Yeah.
But if a client says, I got $3,500, I need that joint patch, can you do it? I'll do it, especially if I know them. But most likely it's going to have a problem the next joint down before I leave. So
one of the problems that I do think that we are as a whole, and nobody wants to talk about this, and when you were explaining the deficit, it's just not a financial deficit. It is a infrastructure deficit, right?
Yeah.
We're handing a huge deficit off to the next generation. And some of the communities have been progressive and some of them are just doing nothing. Right? And so I can name a few communities that are doing both. They're doing a lot or they're doing nothing. And the communities that are progressive, none of the taxpayers really realize what that community is doing for them when they're bringing clean water and new water mains and new sewer mains and they're lining and getting things fixed. But then they got this old generation of people going, 2 years, 372 days and 6 hours, and it's not my problem. I've only got 16 more months. I've only got 6 months. I've only got 6 days, right? And it's not my problem. And they just kick the can. And there's so many communities that we can drive from here to your home offices and say
100%.
They're progressive, they're nothing. And unfortunately for the taxpayers, the ratepayers, the cost of everything goes up. And those guys, and if I say this to our team, if you think I'm talking about you, I probably am. If you feel that this strikes a nerve, but if you're listening, like, we got to be productive and we've got to be moving the communities forward and taking care of this infrastructure. It's not getting any younger out there, and everything underground has a shelf life, whether people realize it or not.
So there's a couple of things that play into that, really. So I think about years ago, I don't remember who said it first, so this is not my quote, right? And I don't know where it came from. It could be much older than I think because I am getting older. But there was a thing at one time when you were with somebody and a crime was committed, a rape or a theft or a murder, and you didn't say anything, right? Or maybe if you basically were consenting to be a part of it, right? Mm-hmm. So silence in many ways is consent. So maybe if a woman didn't fight off a man didn't fight off a woman, or maybe maybe you were with somebody that committed a crime, you never said nothing. You were consenting to be with them, right? And so in our communities, people who are the stakeholders for our community that we vote in or appointed in, right? When they don't say anything about the failing infrastructure, do anything, they're consenting to say that I'm a part of the problem. They 100% are without saying anything. When I was in college, when I went back for a while, I was an old man with a bunch of young kids in a computer class, and I felt really weird. And I spent $1,500 in that class because it was mandatory, and I only learned one thing from it. And it really wasn't gigabytes, megabytes, or mosquito bites. It was none of those. But what it was is that the teacher was talking one day for the first time that I ever paid attention, and I did pass, I'm not sure how, is he said that if your computer is one day not working, and then I started listening in because that's usually every day at my age, a computer wasn't working. And he said, and you get mad at it. And I'm like, mm-hmm. And he says, and you throw it out the window. Mm-hmm. He says, and when you go get it and bring it back in, it'll always work worse than before you threw it out the window. And that really sunk. I remembered that from all these years, right? And so then I think about our industry that we're in, right? Yeah. The sewers, the water lines, the bridges, no matter what we're talking, manholes, I don't care what we're talking about, gas line infrastructure, electrical, that if we choose to do nothing with our failing system, it'll always be worse tomorrow. Mm-hmm. It's not going to get any better.
Yeah. And it's crazy that they let that happen when all they talk about on campaign trail is growth.
Growth.
Right? Growth of the community, growth of this, growth of that. You can't have growth if your system that you currently have doesn't support the people that you currently have.
100%. Know what you're voting for, right? Yeah. So I want all this change. And then when you realize the change includes pain, and then all of a sudden we all become sissies, right? No, I don't love pain. But I spent $1,500 to know that. And I think it was worth it. I would have paid $1,500 probably for that 2 or 3 times.
This sounds like a lesson well learned.
And I may have still did the same. I may have threw a computer out the window. I'm not sure.
Sometimes it just feels good.
It just feels good.
Sometimes you got to do what feels good, even though it's not the right thing, you know, and it's not always the most logical, but.
And I don't always believe everything everyone tells me, so I have to test theories.
Yeah.
It did work worse, for sure.
I would like to see somebody campaign, though, with infrastructure as part of their campaign just to see what would happen. Like, I promise, if you vote for me, I will make sure your sewers and your manholes.
Just sounds ridiculous.
Right? Like, how do you make that sound great to everyone? I related to, we've got kind of a mutual friend at the table in town. He's the athletic director for our school. And not too long ago, get this message from him like, hey, our basement is completely filled with like water. I think it's sewage, like it, happened overnight type of a thing. We just stepped down in the basement and I'm in 3 inches of water. So that's when people start to notice, right? So if you go on the campaign trail and you say, I promise you will never have sewage come into your basement. And if you do, we'll take care of it. Now you're talking, right?
You're talking 100%. And that's an easy bet for most politicians, only because they can say that, but then if they don't get the support of the other trustees or council members, it won't happen. So they can just blame them for doing it, right? And then there's that. They just threw the computer out the window.
Yeah, this guy never flushes the toilet, so he doesn't care about if it works or not.
That's right. I think the last time I looked at...
you guys aren't getting elected in anything.
That guy definitely pees on a tree out back. He doesn't use a toilet. He doesn't care.
There's a level of freedom to that, though, that I can appreciate.
Hey, beauty of living in the country, right, Cole?
Yeah.
Hey, and everything we're talking about involves the infrastructure that we're talking about. But I know years ago when I was speaking somewhere in Indianapolis or Fort Wayne, I can't remember, at some point in time, the American Society of Civil Engineering, the ASCE, had put out a publication that said that America's infrastructure. Now, I don't remember the exact what all that included. Was it bridges? Was it gas? Was it highways? Underground utilities? But was $3.6 trillion behind. $3.6 trillion then, right? And so we know it's the growth of inflation and what's happening. I mean, I have no idea what that number would be today. And maybe someone knows a newer number that was put out. I would say it's probably 6 by now.
Yeah, I would say it's a way bigger number.
And that's a number that's just really, and to do nothing about it, I mean, the number just grows bigger and bigger. And so I just tell my kids all the time, there's a lot of things that we do in this life, maybe maybe you're not a tree hugger, and I'm not saying that to be offensive, but, people call, tree huggers are trying to save the environment and planet. I'm all about the planet and saving the environment. And I wish we could, find better ways to do things. But until we figure, we have systems that are leaking, some sewer systems that are leaking so much sewage outside of the pipes that's getting into the soil. If we don't start with the things that are contributing to the problem that we don't see, it's like if you wish you could sell, that the spray aerosol, poo be gone, right? You just go, psh, it's gone, right? But we don't have that, right? So we need money. So right now, there are so many things that we can't see with our eye that are contributing to the pollution of our grounds and to our lakes and to our streams, the environment, which goes to trees and to the stuff we eat, that we could take care of by tightening up our infrastructure, right? And so we can start there without, it's contributing to the lake problems and to the ocean problems. So yes, we should not let stuff float out in the waterways, but when you have 36-inch storm sewers and 60-inch that drain directly into waterways,
Yeah, that's a good talking point about it's always better to be upstream than downstream, but you're always downstream someplace. So
when I was at American Augers, one of the arguments that we heard all the time, because we were on the drilling side and trying to sell big drills for pipeline, essentially. They were like, oh, this is bad for the environment, pipelines and all that stuff. And, our argument was, well, would you rather an old gas line leak into the soil or for us to put a new one in? And then the next argument was, well, we don't want you to, cut in and ruin our wetlands and waterways and our rivers and all that stuff. And I said, well, I understand that. I've had these conversations at trade shows with people that were there protesting and, whatever. And it's essentially the easiest and cleanest way to put in a new utility is to drill it under the ground, because you go underneath the wetlands and waterways. You go underneath the rivers. You don't disturb it. You don't open cut it. You don't have to dam it off to dig it up or whatever. So when it comes to people thinking about why should we replace and what systems and processes we should use, we're seeing it right now in Bryan over there by the baseball fields. They dug up the entire road to redo everything. I'm not really sure why. I don't know what the project is. Maybe they had to, but
they probably don't know.
Their whole community, the everything is messed up over there. They can't even get to their driveways right now. It's a 2 foot. They dug down. This is the deepest I've ever seen them dig a road down, like 2.5 feet. So people can't even get in their driveways right now. So talk about messing up entire community flow and everything else. Yeah, that's a full replacement.
Yeah, and that's what they say, the old adage, you have to tear an engine apart before you can rebuild it. And so getting back on track sometimes means staying off track for a little while. I did a job in Angola, Indiana many years ago, and I remember we were digging 32 feet deep to this lady's front yard, and she was an elderly lady, and I'm not going to say what that really means in age because I'll probably get hate mail over that, but she was definitely elderly, and I would talk to her and really try to walk her through process. A lot of questions. She was a widow, and so we're digging, and we have mountains of dirt as you could expect. It was an import-export job, so there was just piles of dirt all over the place, and she would complain to me about it, and I would listen to her stories all the time. And I said, you have good reason to complain. Geez, because I don't have any of this at my house in Ohio, so I understand why you're upset. And then it sat there for a long time, so we were letting some of the settlement take place, and she called the city, and I had to go talk to her. And so we rough cleaned it up one day in her yard and a couple other yards. So we knocked a 30-foot pile down to about 8 feet tall and kind of mounded them off a little bit with plans to do rehab, finish the rehab up in about a month. So she had called again, and I went out, and she said, look at this mess. And I said, what mess? This mess. I said, really? She said, yeah. I said, do me a favor. She said, yeah. I said, close your eyes. She did. And I said, think back 30 days ago. Now open them. I go, that looks good, don't it? She goes, it really does. And sometimes I think it's the mindset of people, right? So for the moment, sometimes we have to go through destruction in construction. And so we have to deconstruct things a little bit, to destroy things, right? So, and then we make them better. And it's like the car effect. If someone needs to get surgery, get a part removed, we have no problem going and getting our gallbladder taken out, right? And we don't know where they throw it. Maybe they use it for fishing bait. I don't know. Maybe they put it in an incinerator. But we don't complain about the destruction there, because why? It impacts us in a positive way. And so some people don't look at construction as positive. And so they look at it for all the negative reasons. So what they do is they put a lens of negativity in front of them, and the whole time they look at what's taking place in their community, it's all negative, right? But if they looked at it from the standpoint that we've got to rebuild or tear an engine apart before we can rebuild it, and we're going to really get somewhere in the end, we're going to have a good product and a better community. They put that lens first, and what they'll see is progress everywhere they go. But I understand that our business owners sometimes are impacted. Soccer moms, do not mess with a soccer mom, all right? Forget the business. Soccer moms will tear you up, right?
Yeah, I've got one at home. Yes, she will.
We got heavy soccer players at the table. So.
Yeah. One day, a lady come up to me, and she's in a car. She drives up, and she goes, when are you going to open up that road? Drive into like a Rite Aid or CVS or whatever in this parking lot? And I go, well, it's going to be closed for a while, but you can use the other one. He goes, but I always use that one. That was a difficult one for me to really like, because I'm like, even I don't know where to go with that one, right? Because normally I have something for everything. I was in Lodi, Ohio working, and we had the road closed. It's closed. Road closed ahead. Advance warning closed. Last opportunity, it's closed. And we're not kidding, it's closed. And then it's closed. And me and my brother there, which you know my brother Bill, we were there, and a Jeep pulls up. It was not a Wrangler, but like the Command, whatever the... What's the...
like a Grand Cherokee
Grand
or something.
Cherokee, that's what it was. Kind of a nice looking one, too. And they said, hey, because we obviously walked up to him, and they said, is the road closed? So my brother said, R-O. And he went through and said, yeah, it's closed. He goes, well, how do I need to get to the mall and I knew where the mall was. And so I thought, really, this conversation, I can't believe we're having it right now, because she went through a lot of signs. And so I remember just... I stepped back, I checked her Jeep out, and I said, straight over that hill. So, just like the commercial, right?
Yeah.
And she looked at me like, are you an idiot? And I was thinking, no, you are. I mean, you passed up every warning sign we had to get to this point. The road is literally closed, and I'm done with this conversation. So sometimes you just deal with that, right? So
one question I've been thinking about, Dave, is early on you said you've went from listening to the stories to being the storyteller, and tell us one, maybe it's people, maybe it's a person, one memorable project or person interaction that you've had in your time that stands out as a key moment in your history of database. What's one project or one person conversation, something that stands out in your database?
Well, there was a number of them, as you could well know, and I actually got to bury the crane operator, excavator operator, who was with me for a long time, and I always thought that the owner of the company put me with him because I was a good foreman. And what I come to realize later in life is I think the owner of the company put me with them because this guy was very smart, and I learned from him. So when I got to burying him, it was pretty awesome. And I'd love to say that was the best thing about that relationship, but really the most important thing that happened during this business was I received something that I never expected from somebody I never expected to get it from. When I'm out in the field putting in work, running work, or doing work, it's transactional to the point of me wanting to invest my time, and then in return we get a good, safe, complete project, and my owner makes money, right? That's the only transaction that takes place. But I was on a particular job in the city of Toledo, and I know the guy's name, but I'll save his name. And we're on a tough force main job, busting rock. And he came up to me one day, and he asked me if I knew and had a relationship with Jesus Christ. And I thought, what's that have to do with aggregate and busting rock and production? Like, that was really the weirdest thing that you've ever said. You know how many people have talked to me about Jesus in my young age? And how did you know that I was really thinking about him? And he every day would talk to me because he was the inspector. He was there all the time. I'm foreman. I'm there all the time. And while I tried to be standoffish because I was prideful, that man was planting seeds. Actually, I think he was watering seeds that were put in by my grandparents many years ago, because as much as I loved the business, I was a greedy, prideful man trying to climb my way up the corporate ladder. I wanted money. I wanted to be successful. I wanted to have everybody's job. But in the backdrop of that, I was no different than any other human being in this world, right? I was no different than any of us, at one point in our life when maybe we would go into the bathroom, we're by ourselves, shut the door, and we look in the mirror and we look in our own eyes, right? We stare into our own eyes, into the back of our own brain saying, what am I here for? Like, is this just a sick joke where I exchange my time for a paycheck to spend it, to exchange my time for a paycheck? Is this what life is all about? And I was asking myself those kinds of questions when he's henpecking me this stuff, right?
Yeah.
And what he didn't know at the time, I've never been able to tell him how much I appreciated that because I haven't seen him in years, in decades, actually. That was one of the things that pivoted my life. And then God put other people in line, but I wasn't a believer then because he asked me that question. I told him no. I told him, like any prideful person, I don't believe in that stuff when I actually didn't know what I didn't believe in. You ever know that? I don't believe that, but I don't know what it is, right? There's not a $10 bill on this table. You know why Because you know what a $10 bill is.
Yeah.
But if you don't know what one is, I can't tell you if there's one here or not. And I didn't know who Jesus was, but I said, I don't believe in that. And that's probably that's the most important thing that I can remember other than meeting my wife in the business. But my bride is beautiful and wonderful. But that guy, I had to meet that guy before I could meet her.
Wow. That's a great testimony. And I think a lot of times when you have conversations on the job site, you kind of don't know where they're going to land or where they're going to go. And he took an open door and walked through it and could have
forever changed my life.
Could have been the one that forever changed your life. Yeah. And it's
back to school for more degrees after I dropped out. Thank you, Ed. I'll give you his first name up. Wherever you are. You worked for Jones and Henry. You know who I'm talking about.
That's awesome.
If there was one that worked there, that his name was Ed. And yeah.
But you don't know where quick conversations are going to go. And that's the interesting thing, too, about this, because everyone's a character on the job site. So if we're all working on the same job site, we have different personalities. We like different sports teams, if we like sports at all. Of course, you wouldn't be on my crew if you didn't, but that's another story. But we all just bring something different to the table, right? Mm-hmm. Some have kids, some don't. Some have grandkids, some are married, some are dating, some drink, some don't drink. And so it just brings all these, I'm coming in with a story that you don't really understand, or you're bringing in one that we all really understand, and we're laughing and giggling. And then all of a sudden, the guy in the excavator's digging, he can't be a part of the conversation, or on the drill, right? And so he's like, what are you guys talking about? You guys look like you're having too much fun. Get to work. Shut up. And then the next day you're arguing.
Yeah.
Right. So someone cut the pipe wrong because I like you to cut it this way when you sharpen it and you cut it that way. But it was still sharp.
I heard something one time. It's the only business where a guy that comes in and he's 20 worries about Larry that's worked there for 60 years. He's 60 years old and he hasn't seen Larry for a couple of days. And now the 20-year-old is worried about his friend Larry that's 60 years old. And he goes, because they've got a bond, they got a friendship, and it's the only industry where your friend circle ends up having decades of opportunity to become close friends with them, and all of a sudden you got a young buck going, hey, I haven't seen Larry for a couple of days. Where's he at? I hope he's okay. And in most cases, most people that are 20 aren't worried about a guy that's 60 that's now his good friend, right?
It's a lot of bonds built on crews, whether you're doing manholes or underground pipe. It's because you learn the nuances like a relationship, So if you're with an excavator or a drill rig or a spray lining operation, you know every move of the person who's ahead of you and the person behind you. And so you're grabbing that tool ready before they even start lifting it up out of the manhole or the hole, while at the same time you're receiving one from somebody else. And the guy's coming up on the drill rig, he's going to drop a rod. He's going to have to pull out one more. I mean, you just know these things. And so you're sort of like synchronized operations. Mm-hmm. And you do have a bond. And you're not afraid to call each other out when things don't go right, because you want everyone to carry their load. Because we got to get so much done a day, right? We have this challenge that we have to meet, and then we also have to celebrate. We talked earlier, I heard a speaker one time, again, not taking credit, I like to cite people who deserve to be cited, but I don't remember the guy's name, but they said that what you don't celebrate, you tolerate, right? And so in other words, right, if we're not 100%. Celebrating, if we're not investing, if we're not trying to do things right and to bring more to the table and to make a tighter team and a better team that we can walk in stride, then there's probably a lot of things that you're just tolerating, right? And if we're not celebrating, we're tolerating. And tolerating is that friction point. And so I try to remember that, and I try to have teams that I have. Like I have a great operations team. Like right now, I have an Apple Watch on, and it's not buzzing, which is awesome, right? Because I'm not with them right now. So
I can't wear one of those because of that buzz. It made me feel like I had Tourette's or something.
That's why I stopped wearing one too.
I just could not. Gotta look, right?
Yep.
Just couldn't do it.
So
God bless you.
relationships are big in the business. And when I think about, S&S Directional Drill, and I think about Art Nobick, I think about Todd, because I think about founder, I think about beginnings, and I think about where we were when we first met, and then I think about where we're at today, and, then Dustin, when we first met, and what we were doing. And we were, I know I'm older than you, but we were kids still, we were
Absolutely.
young, right?
I was definitely a kid when we met.
And I'm just as good looking now as I was then, right? And
you don't know what you don't know, and I don't know if that's the truth or not. So I'm going to take your word for it.
well, you're just
Is it a
saying
$10 bill or not?
I don't know.
It is a good analogy. I think you can use that anywhere.
Speaking of that, where were you when you met Todd? Were you guys working together? Was he up there?
Gleason Construction.
Was he working for Gleason at the time?
Yeah, we were working down by, I think it's just interesting. I think we were down by wastewater treatment plant down by the Maumee River, and I think it was in Wood County. And I remember we were together not long. We were on a project doing some cleanup, restoration, and different things, and then I didn't see him anymore. And then I found out he wasn't working there anymore. And the next thing you know, he was, he's S&S, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And so then he started working, doing some jobs for us, and then I was working at Andersack Pitson, and then you guys were doing work for us there. I think that's where we actually might have first met.
I think it was Andersack where we met.
Yeah, that or maybe Lake Gleason.
It was Gleason
Brighton
because it was Brighton, and I remember that job site.
The Force Mains.
Wolfgang Puck.
Wolfgang Amadeus Puck, whatever his name is, right? Wolf Pack, Wolf Dog.
Yeah, something Wolf.
We might find out that wasn't even his name, but you
Probably
know what?
isn't.
We're just
If we're talking about the chef, it's his name.
Yeah, is it the chef? Okay. He didn't bring any food out.
No, I think that was just it was like a second or third home.
I remember taking the deck apart, and I remember doing it in protest internally because you need to take the deck out. Yes, sir. But inside, you're not taking it out, right? You're like, really? I have to take us out board at a time. And I learned a valuable lesson there too, right? Because some things are important to other people in ways that it's not important to us. And that's something we should always cling to, right? And understand, people's feelings. Maybe there's something memorial about that. Maybe memorable about that. Or maybe they're just, want to irritate us. Or maybe it's just because it's their deck, right? And I don't know what it is. So it helped me to realize that, not everything in this world is painted in a way that, I appreciate it in a way that somebody else does. So, I learned a lot from that. I learned how heavy wood was too, and how long it took to take it. And it never goes back the way you took it apart.
I remember we had to drill down the hill to get the pipe there, and then once you said what you had to do, I was like, oh, man, I got the easy job today. See you guys.
Sometimes.
You didn't want to help carry 27 bags of cement down here,
so we can put the half yard or yard of concrete around the anti-flotation ring around the grinder pump.
Yeah, no, I gotta keep moving. We get paid by the foot, not by the pound of sand I carry.
And that's why we say you have to love this, because no one carries that much cement and hates their job. It's just you have to fall in love with it. And even though
you might hate the moment, but you still love the day.
It's like a relationship, right? It's like sometimes you get up on the wrong side of the bed. And sometimes you're the bug, as Jim Gleason would say, and sometimes you're the windshield. And that day, we're definitely the bug. That's always a good saying, though.
I'm going to have to rewatch this episode to catch all of the good sayings that's happened.
Do you think I had some good sayings?
I thought you've had, we call them nuggets.
Lots of nuggets
I think you've had a lot of nuggets.
He just says that because it's true.
I wrote one down that I think, Dustin, you could even use on Thursday morning is we talk about a plan, but you have to have a playbook.
Yeah.
Because everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the mouth. Mike Tyson said that.
Exactly. So
But
here's
the
what
playbook concept is everything.
100%. I forgot about the Tyson thing. I got to remember that. I got that. That's right. Tyson did say that. Yeah. That is good. Plan and playbook. But I used to tell everybody that when I would do project management training, is I would try to train managers and foremen about the projects they were on, just to think a little bit, to be able to use, critical thinking on a project. So I would say to the guys, we would be in a room and we're just as a regular after work, meeting, and I would pick out randomly, and I would say, to you, Dustin, if you're on the job tomorrow, you're spraying some manholes and it's on a state road. If something could go wrong, tell me 2 or 3 things that you think could go wrong on this job that you know about the job. You've got the information. What could go wrong?
Well, you got traffic. One thing would be if there's traffic issues. Another thing would be, what if the generator doesn't start? What if we're at the wrong hole?
Oh, boy.
What about if we get it done, what are we supposed to do next?
Hold it right there. So you know what I tell guys after that? Because you know those things should not go wrong. Those are the very things you should not be calling me about tomorrow. Because you know you need traffic control, you better have a spare generator. In fact, after the meeting, make sure the one you have starts, right, that it goes off. And then what are you going to get done early? What's the playbook, right? You got a plan, but what about the rest of it? Because, you know, once you get punched in the mouth, right, it's gone. So I always tell them the things that we think of today that could go wrong tomorrow should never go wrong tomorrow. Because those are things that, when I just said what could go wrong, you know, that you don't know about, well, now we know about them.
Can you consolidate that on Thursday morning from 7:01 to 7:21? I do a leadership thing on every Thursday, and
just give them paper and say, write down 5 things that could go on your job tomorrow, and then when they do, just say those should never go wrong tomorrow.
Yeah, thanks for building my Thursday.
Because those are the things we know.
When we're calling, this is the furthest ahead you've been on a Thursday meeting.
Stop it.
Right.
Maybe.
Did you punch it? Yeah. No. But you can just do AI and it'll print this, right? Or something. I have no idea.
Can you have this ready for Thursday morning for me?
I might be able to have this clip ready for Thursday morning.
That would be great because I think training and developing people, it's a constant, right? Always be training, always be coaching, right? ABC, always be coaching. And I think that, I don't know about you guys, but I think that you, Dave, have carried this conversation today with your stories and the nuggets you've shared. And I've learned a ton today. And so I appreciate you carrying us on the Trenchless Table podcast today, because it's been extremely enlightening and just, you know, you gave, I don't know what now, maybe 4 hours to hang out today and catch up. And boy, we've covered a lot of territory. And one thing that you and I really haven't caught up about is even how work's going.
That's right.
I'm sitting here thinking, like, we haven't even talked about work yet.
We've not talked about work.
And so it's just been a great, fulfilling day. And I just appreciate you coming and spending it with us.
I appreciate you asking me and allowing me to come down. And you two gentlemen, it's been a great day. You know, could talk for the rest of my life. And my bride says, you know, that don't get him started. He's a preacher. He won't shut up. That's the old saying, you know, they want to have him.
You got to get to the potluck eventually.
Like some lady told me, again, don't want to take somebody else's stuff, right? So this is somebody else's quote, but she said, the only way that we can do it with Dave, basically, is to give him a lifesaver, and when he's done sucking on it, the talk's over.
My father-in-law is also a pastor, and he has one guy in his congregation he just told me about yesterday, actually, on the car ride when I was picking up my motorcycle. He goes, if that guy looks at his watch, I know I've talked too long.
That is a very wise saying.
Yeah. So there's one guy in the congregation he always has his eye on. So the guy, he hasn't looked at his watch yet, but he knows if I look at my watch, or if he looks at his watch, I got to wrap it up.
He's a very smart man, because at this point, you've lost him.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I'll wrap us up here. So,
yeah, that's great.
Thanks for coming on to join us at the table. And we'll see you guys next time.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.